Welcome to the FinLink FinCast, where we talk about everything wealth management, especially as it pertains to M&A. Here is your host, Xander Heinen.
Welcome to the FinLink podcast. Today, I'm happy to have my friend and advisor educator, Todd Fithian from Legacy joining us. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, Xander, thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, very stoked on our end as well. To start, I guess, Todd, can you give us a little background on yourself, a little bio?
Yeah, for sure. So today I'm responsible for running a company called the Legacy Companies. We're based out of Boston, Mass, primarily working with advisors across the U.S. as well as Canada, coast to coast, in both countries. Interesting story how that happened, but it did, and we having some fun doing that. So my backstory was entered the business as an advisor, third generation actually in my family. My grandfather, father were in the business, and so it was kind of just a path that was carved and paid. And I said, I guess that's what I'm gonna do when I get out of school. And so that was where I first kind of cut my teeth in the business. And then Legacy, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, and the kind of the work that we're doing with advisors and firms and stuff. But that was really formed out of our advisory practice because there was a need that was lacking that we really found for ourselves, but other advisors really needed. And so we basically formed that company to help advisors perform better and grow more naturally and things of that nature. But yeah, that's really kind of a little bit of the backstory anyways for us, and how I got into the business.
Well, I have to say that's a perfect name for your business. Didn't know that backstory, so that all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll jump into it. The theme of today's FinCast is really succession. Succession is really a significant industry challenge right now, as you're well aware. McKinsey estimates that by 2034, at current productivity levels, the advisor workforce will decline to the point where the industry faces a shortage of roughly 100,000 advisors. 74% of young advisors are leaving the workforce shortly after becoming licensed per DeVoe, which is another challenge we're seeing.
Yeah.
And to add to that, 13,000 of our advisors on FinLink do not have succession plans in place. So I would really love to pick your brain on succession and how we educate advisors on succession. And what are you seeing through your work at legacy companies?
Yeah, listen, we do a lot of coaching and consulting work with advisory firms and teams, and we are, like, one of the things that is a top priority for virtually all of those engagements is succession, right? Either I've got nothing, I've got to find somebody and we've got to think about this, or it's we've got people internally that could be good fits, but how do we structure that, right? How do we ensure that actually goes well, and things of that nature? We are, with that study is spot on. I feel like I'm living that study, and then smart, intelligent people like McKinsey and others come and they do the data and they bring all the data and evidence behind it, which I'm like, okay, like, I'm not just feeling this is actually real, because there's a massive shortage out there, and I'm running, again, as I said, lots and lots of firms that don't have proper succession plans in place. And the shortage of advisors entering this business, on top of the traditional fail out rates that they talk about, is spot on. I'm finding a lot of companies are coming to us to help develop Gen 2. Now, we haven't done a lot of work there historically as a company. We've dealt with more tenured advisors, right? 20, 25 years in the business, good established, strong business, and things of that nature, and want to make it better and things. But we're really getting pulled a lot into that world because people are concerned, right? People are concerned about it. How do we develop that next generation of talent that will be successful. Yeah.
Well, I think you're a step ahead with that. I know that, a lot of people are looking for solutions in that space, but from the conversations I have with members on FinLink, they don't even know where to start. They don't know where to look to have these conversations. They don't know where to get educated to understand even, where we would make a structure for a G2. And I'd have to say, as someone who works in the M&A and succession industry, we always say start your succession when you start your business. It's probably a longer process than you think, and don't wait until that moment arrives when you need that successor.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh my God, I would say that is just great advice. I mean, I was talking with a client this morning. They run a very successful business, good team, and things of that nature. But again, they're concerned about how they develop that next gen of talent, and they've got a 5-year time horizon. 5 years, they want to be out. The two lead owners of the business, they want to be done in 5 years, and they got a lot of work to do, because to your point you just made, they didn't start thinking this way when they started.
Right.
Bad, quite frankly, for a lot of these people that have been successful in this business. Not that they've been successful. It's a great place to make a living and do very well and all those things. However, right, when do financial advisors entering this world get taught, running a business, building a business 101, right?
Right.
When does 201 kind of kick into play?
Yeah.
Nobody's helping them think about, okay, it's one thing to say, hey, you got to start when you start. Start when you start. Start thinking about the end game of this when you start. If you don't prepare it for exit or succession, man, you're going to be up against it. And again, because of that, they need good partners and people around them like you guys, and hopefully like us, to help them navigate through it, because they don't know where to begin. My clients don't know where to begin. They don't.
And I think, that's kind of a product of how the industry used to be before this RIA mega frenzy. Everybody was a broker, right? They had an office in a building, and they didn't have to run the business. They were just concentrating on what they did best, which was, being a financial advisor. And now, there's no set roadmap for how to run a business if you've never run one. And I speak from experience, starting a couple LLCs myself. That it's kind of a slap in the face when you get out there and you need to start something, and you need to learn how to run it efficiently and have proper operating margins, etc.
Yeah.
What do you, I guess to add to what you're offering to G1 and G2, something that came up in a podcast I had the other day with lenders is G2 financing. And due to multiples becoming so high, it's tough to get financing if the cash flow isn't adding up. I guess the best thing that I could tell them as a former lender is start early, because you think you might have funding but you don't.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a lot of lending or financing issues arise with the G2s coming in?
I am. I on multiple fronts. Not only is somebody not prepared to back them at that point in time, right? But it's also, I'm finding, at least in my work, and I don't know if others are, that these are not the risk takers of similar to, right, the people they're trying to succeed, right? The owners of the business.
100%.
And so they're like, I'm taking on, like, this is how much, and I've got to pay it back over how many years, and so that's a real pill to swallow. And so we're I believe helping our clients be creative around that, and again, the earlier you start, the better chance you have, right, to put structures in place to bring in potential partners that can help with some of the non-traditional kind of bank lending, right, and think about it differently. But it's definitely a big challenge.
So say if I was a G2 advisor, I have my two sons, wanting to take over the business in the next 5 to 6 years. I don't know what I'm doing. I go to legacy. What would I mean, I guess I wouldn't even know what I'm looking for. What would that conversation look like? What would the process look like with you guys? Um, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So starting point for us is a very standard place, which is it's really about getting clarification of vision, right?
Yep.
Really understanding where is it you're actually trying to get to? What do you want this end game to look like? And listen, we're dealing with smart people and people that have been successful in many ways in life, and so it's not that they don't have a vision, right? But what I will tell you, and having done this work a lot, is um, it's not often crystallized, right? So we're really spending the time first and foremost. Let's get really, really clear on what you want this thing to look like, how you want this to play out. The other side of it is that when you really get down to the mechanics of it, is like, is this really what G2 wants, right?
Right.
There's actually a great business book out there, a friend of mine, Tom Deans, wrote, called Every Family's Business. And so when it's a generational family thing, right? It's interesting because they might want to pursue other things, and it might not necessarily be this business, or they might want to really change the
Yeah.
business and the way that it's done. So you need to actually really do that visioning work and spend that time on both sides of that, if that makes sense.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
but that's the starting point to create, clarity around the fact, is there commonality? Do these visions align? Can we actually bring this together? Can we make this work? And then from there, we start to get into, okay, what would it look like? What are we talking about as far as time frames and things of that nature? But that's the starting point, is let's get really, really dialed in and crystal clear on what you want to see happen, what's important to you, and all of those things from a vision standpoint, if that makes sense. But that's where
Well, yeah, I've been, spending the last 3 weeks or so plotting out some education for FinLink, which I've discussed with you. Our first education, let's call it a module, is a roadmap for M&A, and that's exactly what I said. Know what you want to do, know it early. I've spoken with a lot of sellers on the Link platform. They don't know. They don't know if they want to merge. They don't know if they want to sell. They might even want to buy, and that can be a tough conversation. But it really needs to be mapped out what you really want to do. You have to spend some time thinking about that, because it is a heavy lift when you do a succession or even for a buyer in an M&A purchase.
The other thing I want to add on to this that you're now getting me thinking about too, that shows up a lot of times, is we look at a couple of other areas in this process, which is financial and mental readiness, right? There can be a real financial gap here that,
Oh yeah.
and we just talked about, is that next generation actually prepared to step in? Can we get proper funding, or can we use some alternative ways to do that? And are they prepared to take that on, right? And the other thing is the founding generation, like, do they have what they need? Do these numbers work for them? Are they clear on
Right.
that? Right. So that's on the are they financially ready? Is the business financially ready?
Oh
Right.
yeah.
But then the other part of it is, you were getting me thinking about, is the mental readiness. One of the things I'm also seeing, and it goes back to an earlier question you asked me, is that there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, like I'm ready for this. Let's get into it. And I want to do this. And then you get down to the final stages, and they're like, I don't know if I'm ready. Right. I could stay one more year. Right.
Right.
I could
Right.
wait a couple more years. And hey, you know what? I'm making 500 grand a year, and, I don't want to say I'm not working so hard, but I mean, like, I know how to do this part, right? I've been
Right.
doing it for years, and, anyways, pushing things forward. So I think financial and mental readiness is a really key important aspect of this as well.
And there's the mental aspect that comes up too. Are you ready to part with your clients, and are you putting them in trustworthy hands? They're your friends, your family, people you've known for 30 years. I've had a lot of conversations about that, and in a lot of the sellers on the FinLink platform, they're very reticent. Oftentimes, it might sound good to jump off and sell your book at a X multiple tomorrow, but you say that, you start the process, and then it hits you. Maybe I want to stay on for that extra couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, or can I get more next year? Like, when's the right time?
Right.
Right. Is,
Right. I don't want to die at my desk, but I don't know if this is the right time.
I
Right.
don't market time for my clients because that would be a bad business, but like I am trying to market time with my business. What
Yeah.
I will tell you is like the worst thing to do is to do these things under a fire drill circumstance.
Yep.
I,
100% from every aspect.
it's not going to go well. Yeah.
So I guess, you know, not to divert too much from succession, but from what you're seeing at Legacy, what are some of the challenges or pitfalls that are facing advisors today, beyond succession?
Yeah. We'll kind of stay teetering on that. I think, again, it's comes down to what I was saying earlier as far as, running, running a business, right? I actually, one of the things I want to make available. I've got a short little article, and we're actually writing an ebook on this topic that'll be out in a couple of weeks, and I'd love to make it available for free to anybody who's interested in it. And they can find us through your website if they're interested. But basically, the article is called "Beyond the Busy Work: How Advisors Can Reclaim Their Passion," and the ebook centers on that, but expands on it about kind of this process of transitioning from actually having a practice to a business, because they're very different. And most of the advisors I meet, when we're beginning stages in our conversations and we're talking, they're talking about business, my business. I've got a business that does this and that. But when you get down to the inner workings of it, it really is more of a practice than it is a business, right? And they're very different. And so, that's one of the fundamental challenges is I see a lot of, lacking of systems and processes in place, consistency, good, talented people, but hey, I've been in these conversations and done these things and won this business before, so I just know how to do it, right? But that's very difficult to replicate and to have somebody come in and succeed, right?
Right.
So, I think one of the great challenges is that many of these advisors that are going to be looking to succeed in the next, let's say, 10 years out of the business, that they are so centerpiece in their businesses. Some days they get to be the advisor out meeting with clients and prospects. And most of my clients would say that those are the days they love, right? But other days, right, later on that day, they might be, leading an operational aspect or challenge with inside of their business. And then maybe in the afternoon, they're actually in the weeds of operations, right?
Yep.
I just had one of my advisors on a roundtable call I run telling me that, hey, we had a really, really important client that we manage a lot of wealth for. And, it's like one of our best clients, but I spent an hour and a half of my time yesterday working for an issue for his son that was a $2,400 kind of issue. I spent an hour and a half of my time, right? That really wasn't a good place for me to spend time. But if I didn't, right, this client wouldn't have been really, really happy with that, So here you got somebody who's in the absolute doldrums of operations in their business. And so, a long-winded way to say that one of the greatest challenges is that people are not really operating and running a business, and it's not their fault. Nobody's ever kind of showed them the structures and the ways to do that. And so we really help them see that in a very simple way. We bring a simple model to it, which is in this article. It'll be in the ebook, but that's a big thing. There's a lot of things, but that's a big thing is running.
I think that's an incredible idea for an ebook. From where I was as a lender and where I was as a consultant, and now working with FinLink and having conversations every day with with people who are dipping their toe into succession or acquisition, I always have a call, it's probably once a day, where a seller wants to talk to me about valuations and they saw somebody on, whatever publication, you name it, LinkedIn, that said, these guys got a 19x multiple of EBITDA.
Yeah.
And I said, well, typically, you're a sole practitioner, it's different, being a sole practitioner and valuing your book as opposed to what we call an enterprise or a true business where you have framework, and it's really running like a very well-run organization as opposed to just, an asset purchase of recurring revenues.
Right.
Yeah, I think that will be a great read. I hope, I can get that link from you when you're done. As far as the article, what was the name of the article you wrote again?
Yeah, so it's called Beyond the Busy Work. Yeah, and it's a link, it's short, it's a quick read. But I think people will really like it and see it, and it'll be meaningful for them to kind of think about, their own businesses and how do I do some of these things. But probably easiest way is just to get it right through the website or reach out or connect with us through the website.
I'll also put it in the description of this FinCast, as we call it. Yeah, you can find that there. Just click on the hyperlink and you'll be directed right to Todd's article. As far as someone who's going in to look for education at Legacy's website, what are they going to be able to find there? I've perused it and I've seen a lot of different things. It's kind of three-tiered, I guess. There's online courses. There are opportunities for you to mentor or business mentorship, and then there's enterprise mentorship as well. I would love to hear what your pitch is on what you guys offer.
Yeah, I mean, having been the fact that we've been at this almost 30 years, right? Which is amazing to me. We've developed and created a lot of content and curriculum, right? So, we've got simple, I think, as you said, kind of do it yourself models, right? Where people for, really short money can get access to all of our training curriculum and all of those things, for, very inexpensively. Do it yourself, go through. And I think that we've structured the things that we do and teach, whether it's around marketing or sales or planning or building the proper organizational operational structures for your business. It's all in there, short videos, workbooks, very actionable, right? And I think for certain people that works, do it on your own. They'll work through that successfully. Other than that, as you point out, we do a lot of consulting, coaching engagements direct with firms, working with their teams, and then, enterprises, will call us and bring us in to work with groups of advisors. As far as the content, like I hit on some of that as far as, we're getting into, sales processes, right? Like, marketing, building strategic marketing plans. Again, one of the areas, I could talk about forever, which is I find advisors spend a lot of time and money time or money, and some do both, but none of which is very strategic, right? And so we teach a very strategic methodology around marketing, and how to build a marketing plan that works and drives growth. So we get into those pieces, but you'll also find when you get in with us that we've got specific courses hitting certain things, right, around bridging the gap in with the next generation. This is a real challenge spot. Like if I'm a Gen 2, right, and let's say you're a lot younger than I am, but I'm going to flip it around and say I'm coming in to succeed you in your business. But if I'm coming in, one of the first things I'm going to say is, hey, Xander, like, tell me about your generational reach with your clients. Right. And you might look at me and be like, well, what do you mean? Say, how sticky are the relationships when you think about the kids? How well do you know them? How well do they know you? Because that's what I'm actually investing in, right? And so we've developed specific programs. How can advisors actually do that, right? Build those sticky relationships, have a methodology and systems for that, or, so that's, that's the kind of content that's available. We have a resource library full of hundreds of different resources, from financial literacy to sales marketing to client engagement letters to estate planning questionnaires. There's a lot, right? So you can get inundated in there, but it's fairly easy to navigate and get to a meaningful place.
Yeah, you guys have some great materials that I've seen so far.
Uh,
And just a shameless plug for all FinLink members. Legacy is offering a membership, as they are a official resource partner with FinLink. Well, Todd, I think, we're at the end of our time here, but I think I have so much more to talk to you about. So I'm definitely going to have you back on. There's a billion things we could go into, and I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it'd kind of veer from the topic.
yeah.
But thanks so much. Definitely be in contact with you as we build out this education portal for ourselves. And, I hope to be working closely with you. So thanks
Yeah.
again for your time, and you have a great Friday.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the audience, and hopefully everybody can take something away from what we talked about here today. And I sure look forward to future interactions with you.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Todd.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye.